In a city that could be any city-tall buildings of glass and steel, streets that hum with traffic, parks where people walk their dogs and children play on swings, there lived a woman named Dr. Amara Okonkwo. She was a neuroscientist, 42 years old, who specialized in the study of decision-making and the brain's prefrontal cortex. Amara had devoted her life to understanding how people make choices. She had published dozens of papers. She had spoken at conferences around the world. She could diagram the neural pathways of choice, the cascade of neurotransmitters that occur in the microseconds before a decision is made. She understood better than almost anyone alive the biological machinery of human agency. And yet, when it came to her own life, she was paralyzed. 15 years earlier, Amara had been accepted to 2 graduate programs, one at MIT, where she would study neuroscience, and one at the Juilliard School, where she would study violin. She had been a gifted violinist from childhood, playing with youth, orchestras, winning competitions, dreaming of concert halls and standing ovations. But she had chosen neuroscience. It was the practical choice, the smart choice. Music was beautiful, but it wasn't a career. Science was the future. 15 years later, Amara lived in a small apartment filled with journals and textbooks. She had a violin she hadn't touched in a decade, gathering dust in the corner. She had a career she was successful in but didn't love, and she had a question that haunted her every quiet moment. What if I had chosen differently? One autumn evening, walking home from the laboratory, Amara took a route she'd never taken before. She wasn't sure why. Perhaps she was simply tired of the usual streets, the usual scenery. Perhaps something drew her down that particular alley, through that particular gate. She found herself in a garden. It shouldn't have been there. This was a dense urban neighborhood, every square foot accounted for, built up and built over. But here was a garden, overgrown and wild, surrounded by high brick walls covered in ivy. Ancient trees spread their branches. Overhead, their leaves turned gold and crimson by the season. A path of worn stones wound between beds of flowers that shouldn't have been blooming this late in the year. At the center of the garden stood a fountain, dry and weathered, and beside the fountain sat an old man. He was ancient, his skin dark and deeply lined, his hair white as fresh snow. He wore simple clothes, a cardigan, slacks, leather shoes that had been resoled many times. "Welcome," he said, as if he'd been expecting her. "I'm the gardener." Amara should have left. She should have been frightened or at least confused. But something about the garden, about the way the light fell through the leaves, made everything feel inevitable and right. "What is this place?" she asked. "It's a garden," the gardener said simply. "A place where things grow, including, sometimes understanding." He gestured to a stone bench beside him. "Sit, if you like. You look tired." She sat. The stone was cool beneath her. "I tend this garden," the gardener continued. but it's not really mine. It belongs to everyone and no one. People find it when they need to. You found it, so I assume you need to. I'm not sure what I need, Amara admitted. Perhaps you need to see, the gardener said. He stood with surprising grace for someone so old. Come, let me show you something. The gardener led Amara down the winding path to a section of the garden she hadn't noticed before. Here, the plants grew in perfect rows, meticulously maintained. Everything was labeled with small copper markers. It looked like the botanical gardens she'd visited as a child. Look there, the gardener said, pointing to a particular plant. It was a tree, perhaps, 7 feet tall, with silvery leaves and branches that seemed to shimmer in the fading light. As Amara looked at it, something strange happened. The air around the tree began to ripple like heat waves on a summer road. The ripples intensified, and suddenly Amara was seeing something else. Not the garden, but somewhere else entirely. A concert hall, grand and beautiful, with soaring ceilings and rows of red velvet seats. On the stage, a woman played a violin. She was lost in the music, her eyes closed, her whole body moving with the rhythm. The music was heartbreakingly beautiful, a piece Amara recognized Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D major. The woman was Amara, or rather it was who Amara might have been. The vision sharpened, became more detailed. Amara could see this other version of herself, this violinist Amara, in moments of her life, practicing for hours each day until her fingers bled, performing in small venues at first, then larger ones, winning a position with a major symphony orchestra. The joy of music flowing through her, the standing ovations, the reviews in newspapers calling her technically brilliant and emotionally profound. But there were other moments too. The constant travel, living out of suitcases, the loneliness of hotel rooms in strange cities, the repetitive stress, injuries in her hands, the fear that her ability to play might end, the endless competition, the politics of orchestra life, the time she played for audiences who talked through the performance or checked their phones, the slow realization that even great music becomes routine when it's your job. Amara saw violinist Amara at 42, the same age she was now. This other Amara was preparing for a performance, standing backstage, feeling the familiar mix of excitement and dread. She still loved music. It was still beautiful. But somewhere along the way, it had stopped being magic and had become work. Sometimes late at night, this violinist Amara wondered what it would have been like to do something else, to use her mind differently, to contribute to human knowledge rather than just interpreting what others had created. The vision faded. Amara stood in the garden again, trembling. What was that? She whispered. A parallel life, the gardener said gently. The life you might have lived if you'd chosen differently 15 years ago. Every choice creates a branching path. You chose neuroscience, but there's another you, in another thread of possibility, who chose music. "I don't understand," Amara said. "Is this real? Is there really another version of me living that life? Does it matter?" The gardener asked. "Whether it's real in the way you scientists mean, real, or whether it's a story your mind is telling itself, or whether it's something else entirely, does that change what you saw? Does it change what you felt?" Amara thought about this. "No," she admitted. "I suppose it doesn't." "The question you've been asking yourself," the gardener said, "is whether you made the right choice. You've been torturing yourself with it for 15 years. What if I'd chosen music? Would I be happier? More fulfilled? More myself?" "Yes," Amara said. "Exactly." "Come," the gardener said. "There's more to see." He led her to another part of the garden where a different plant grew, this one with deep purple flowers and leaves that seemed to catch the light like prisms. Again, the air rippled. Again, Amara saw another life. In this one, she had become neither a scientist nor a musician. She had met someone, young, fallen in love, gotten married. She saw herself as a mother of 3, living in a suburban house with a garden of her own. She saw birthday parties and school plays, the exhaustion and joy of raising children, the comfortable partnership of a long marriage. This Amara had given up both professional ambitions for family life, and she was content. Not ecstatic, not unfulfilled, just content. She sometimes wondered what might have been, but mostly she was too busy living to worry about unlived lives. The gardener showed her more. A life where she had joined Doctors Without Borders, traveling to disaster zones and war-torn countries, saving lives but never putting down. Roots. A life where she had become a teacher at a small college, shaping young minds deeply connected to her students. A life where she had suffered a car accident at 25 and spent years in recovery, learning to walk again, redefining her entire sense of self through adversity. Each life had its joys and sorrows. Each life had moments of profound meaning and moments of crushing doubt. Each Amara in each life wondered sometimes about the roads not taken. Finally, exhausted, Amara sat down on the stone bench again. The gardener settled beside her. "I don't understand," she said. "If every choice leads to both joy and suffering, if every life has regrets, then what's the point? How do we know if we've chosen rightly?" "You don't," the gardener said simply. "You can't. That's the terrible freedom of being human. You make your choices with incomplete information, and you live with the consequences, and you never get to know what would have happened if you'd chosen differently. Not really. But you just showed me." "I showed you possibilities," the gardener interrupted gently. "Stories your mind can construct. But they're not real in the sense that you can access them or change your choice. They're real only in showing you a truth, that every path has beauty and pain, fulfillment and regret." Amara felt tears on her cheeks. So I've been torturing myself for nothing. The musician's life wasn't better. It was just different. Yes, the gardener said. But here's the more important question. Why have you been torturing yourself at all? Amara wiped her eyes. Because I'm not happy. I'm successful. I'm respected in my field, but I'm not happy. And I thought it was because I'd made the wrong choice 15 years ago. But what if, the gardener said slowly, the problem isn't the choice you made 15 years ago, but the choice you're making now, today, every day? I don't understand. You saw the violinist's life, the gardener said. She still loved music, yes, it was still beautiful to her, even when it had become work. Yes, and you saw yourself in this life, the scientist's life. Do you still love science? Is it still beautiful to you? Amara opened her mouth to say yes, then stopped. I don't know. I think I lost sight of it somewhere. It became about publications, about grants, about tenure. I forgot why. I started. The musician version of you wondered sometimes about using her mind differently, the gardener said. The scientist version of you, the real you, sitting here, never touches her violin anymore. Do you see the pattern? Amara sat in silence, feeling something shift in her understanding. We abandon parts of ourselves, she said slowly. Whichever path we choose, we think we have to give up everything the other path represents, but we don't, not really. Yes, the gardener said, and his smile was warm. The musician could have kept her curiosity, her analytical mind. You could have kept your music. The paths diverge, but we are not just one thing. We contain multitudes. I could play again, Amara said, and it felt like a revelation. I could make time for music even while doing neuroscience. They don't have to be enemies. You could, the gardener agreed. Though it won't be like it was. You won't be a concert violinist. That ship has sailed. But you could be a scientist who plays violin, a neuroscientist who understands music from the inside, who maybe even studies the neuroscience of music. You could integrate the selves, not choose between them. Amara thought about her apartment, about the violin gathering dust. She thought about her research, which had become mechanical, joyless. She thought about the version of herself she'd seen in the vision, the violinist wondering about science, the scientist who'd forgotten beauty. What about regret? She asked. What about the 15 years I've lost? Lost? The gardener raised an eyebrow. You've published groundbreaking research. You've advanced human knowledge. You've trained students who will do important work. That's not lost time, Amara. That's a life lived. The question isn't whether you chose rightly 15 years ago. The question is what you'll choose tomorrow. As the light faded from the sky, the gardener walked Amara back to the garden gate. The city sounds returned, car horns, distant sirens, the rumble of the subway beneath the street. Will I be able to find this place again? Amara asked. Do you need to? The gardener replied. You've seen what you needed to see. The garden will be here if you need it again, but I suspect you won't. You have your own gardening to do now." "My own gardening? Your life," the gardener said. "The cultivation of your many selves, the integration of all, the things you are and might be. That's the real garden, Amara, not this place. This is just where you remembered that." Amara stepped through the gate. When she looked back, she saw only a brick wall, solid and permanent, with no gate at all. For a moment, she wondered if she'd imagined everything. Then she realized it didn't matter. The truth the gardener had shown her, that every path contains joy and sorrow, that we need not abandon all parts of ourselves when we make a choice, that the question is not whether we chose rightly in the past, but what we choose now, that truth remained, whether the garden was real or metaphor. 3 months later, Amara published a paper titled "The Neuroscience of Musical Expression, a Performer's Perspective." It combined her years of scientific expertise with her renewed practice of violin. The paper was unlike anything else in the field, bridging two worlds that rarely spoke to each other. She started a small concert series at the university, bringing together scientists and musicians to explore the intersection of their disciplines. She played again, not in grand concert halls, but in small venues for audiences who listened. It wasn't the life of a concert violinist she'd imagined at 20, but it was her life fully lived with all her selves present. And on quiet evenings, when she practiced alone in her apartment, she sometimes thought about the gardener and smiled. She had learned to tend her own garden too, cultivate all the parts of herself, to let nothing wither from neglect. The choice she'd made 15 years ago had led her here. A different choice would have led somewhere else, equally complex, equally human. But this was where she was, and it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. As you rest now, consider this. You too contain multitudes. The choices you've made have shaped you, yes, but they haven't erased the other possibilities within you. The artist can still create, even if they chose a different profession. The athlete can still move their body with joy. The scholar can still learn. We are not diminished by the roads not taken. We are enriched by remembering that we are more than any single path could contain. Let that thought settle into your bones as you drift. You are enough. You have always been enough. The garden of your life is yours to tend with compassion and patience and love. Rest now